Welcome to Knife Thoughts. This video is going to be my full review of this knife, and this is the Jack Wolf Knives Venom Jack. So this is the second release of the Venom Jack here in August of 2024, and the Venom Jack is one of Jack Wolf Knives patterns that I think was most anticipated for a re-release. People seem to really love this knife, and I did do a full review of my version from the first run, which is this green micarta version. And in my full review, I talked about how I kind of conceptualized this knife as a modern take on a peasant's knife or a sodbuster type knife. It has kind of a similar handle shape to a sodbuster. So here's a case sodbuster. You can see they both have that upturn towards the butt. But then it has a Waren Cliff blade, which I kind of saw as the modern day equivalent of a utility blade, whereas the sodbuster has a drop point or just a classic kind of straight back blade. The Waren Cliff is maybe more suited to today's cutting tasks, like opening boxes, breaking down cardboard, and things like that. But Ben did say that it is conceptualized as a Waren Cliff trapper. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about that, show you some comparisons to some other trappers, and then also compare the first and second run. So first of all, I don't have any Waren Cliff trappers to show you, but there are a pattern, particularly I think a lot of custom makers do. A little bit of a larger trapper style handle with a Waren Cliff blade. Certainly GEC has done some Waren Cliff trappers, as well as the Northwoods that they actually just recently ran. It was a Waren Cliff trapper. But I don't have a trapper with a Waren Cliff blade currently, but I did want to show you a comparison of the handle shape to some classic trappers. So this is the case trapper, and you can see it's a little bit different in that there is a bump here in the handle of the case trapper, and there's not in the Venom Jack. But they both have the upturn towards the butt, the kind of skinnier area towards the pivot. I think a little bit more similar is a classic kind of serpentine trapper. So this is a Rough Rider trapper, but you can see that it has kind of a similar shape to it. And so it's definitely something that I can see being a trapper, especially since the release of the first Venom Jack, Jack Wolf Knives came out with a true peasant's knife, or pioneer. They call this the Pioneer Jack, so like a sodbuster. And you can see that it is more similar to a classic sodbuster. So definitely more along the same lines as a classic sodbuster. So definitely I can see how it is more of a Waren Cliff trapper than it is a peasant's knife. But I just want to talk about that, kind of my conceptualization of it has changed and, gone in line with the designers, the makers' conceptualization of it. But then there's also some differences between the first run and this run. So first of all, Ben has been adding these 3 lines or threads, whatever you want to call them, fluting to the bolsters of a lot of the models. And so you can see it has that there. And on the first run, there was 1 on the top and 1 on the bottom. Now there's 3 on the top and 2 on the bottom. So just a little bit extra flair there. And then also the sharpening choil is made longer. So the idea there being that when you sharpen the knife, if you get past that sharpening choil, you can start to have what they call smile. I actually didn't know that it was called that until I saw Ben using the term, but it's basically where when you sharpen, it starts to get taller. The actual bevel of the sharpening gets taller because of its kind of intersecting with the plunge grind. So it's something that doesn't look great, and it's kind of something that they want to avoid. So they've given it this larger sharpening choil, and I don't think it makes a big difference. You know, I used to be anti-sharpening choil because, you know, sometimes they can get caught up on stuff. I haven't noticed that on these Jack Wolf knives, to be honest. I think it's something I notice more on modern, larger knives. But on these knives, I don't really tend to notice getting caught up on the sharpening choil. So if it keeps the aesthetic, you know, it's a good thing. And those are kind of the main differences beyond the change from M390 on the first run to S90V. But that's not really a new change. They've been using S90V instead of M390 for a little while now. So, you know, nothing super new if you follow Jack Wolf knives. But there's several versions on this run, a lot of really cool versions. I actually initially asked if I could go with the rock pattern titanium. The reason for that purely was because it's something they haven't done before. So that's one that I think will probably be popular, just because a lot of people do like rock pattern titanium, and it is something that they haven't done before. Now that doesn't have the bolsters. There's no faux bolsters on it, like there are on some of the other models that have full titanium, like this second version of the laid back jack. It just has that rock pattern the whole way across the handle. Now, one thing I asked Ben if it's the same rock pattern on all of them, and it is. It's identical, which makes sense because it's CNC or milled. I'm not sure if it technically is CNC, but you know, it's the same pattern on each of those handles. But this is the one that I ended up with. It was my second choice, and really, I think aesthetically, it's my first choice because this toxic camo carbon is super cool, and it's not just green. Hopefully you can see in there, there's yellow flecks in there that really give it that toxic look. It's not just like green, black and yellow, which really gives it a cool toxic look. And then another thing with this is another first, if I'm remembering correctly, is the black wash finish. So they have used DLC finish on knives before. I'll talk about this one a little bit more, but for example, here on the Venom Jack, or the Vampire Jack, but this is a black wash. So it's DLC and then kind of a stone wash type finish on it. So it gives it a little bit of a worn look, a little bit more kind of grungy, and a little bit less uniform. So I think that this version is the most kind of fitting with the theme of a Venom Jack. You can't really get more like that, I think, than this really cool black wash along with this really awesome toxic camo carbon. I actually think that the two, you know, models, versions from Jack Wolf knives that most fit their, you know, theme or aesthetic, however you want to say it, are these two here. So this one being the Vampire Jack in this really cool black and red carbon fiber, and then the black DLC kind of fully blacked out, and then now this Venom Jack in this really cool toxic camo carbon. So, you know, if you want the most venomy of the Venom Jacks, I think that this is your best option. But this knife is made really, really nicely. I mentioned in my unboxing, really nice fitment between the covers and the bolsters all across, and the covers and the liners, just really nicely done. Nice fitment here on the back spring too. You can see those lines. Those are not at all gaps. Those are just, I think, from the black wash finishing. It's a little heavier right on the edges. The action is great. I'd say like maybe a 6.5 or 7, something like that. Beautiful sounding. I love how deep this Waren Cliff blade sits in the frame. It is ground really nicely and thinly. You can see it comes to a nice thin tip there. So it works great for, you know, all your, like I say, normal EDC tasks like opening boxes, cutting tape, cutting paper, cutting down, breaking down cardboard. And I even have used it some for some food prep, like cutting tomatoes and stuff for my son. So I think it works great for, you know, most tasks. I've found Waren Cliff blades to be really useful, and this is a pretty classic Waren Cliff in its shape here. Nice sturdy Waren Cliff. No blade play obviously, and super well centered. One thing I did notice is it seems like there's maybe a little bit of concavity to the edge, just like maybe they went a little bit hard on the sharpening or light on the sharpening. It's kind of hard to show it. I don't know if you'll be able to see it here. I don't think you can, because it's very, very slight, super slight. And I could see it when I held it up on my phone screen, because I think the phone screen is really flat, but you probably can't see it there. And again, that's because it is so slight. So, you know, I mentioned to Ben, I don't think that it's something that many other people other than me would have noticed. And I'm sure that it's not something that's common across the run, or maybe even on any besides mine. But it is something I've noticed. And I said it honestly almost just makes it a little bit more fang-like. So it's not something that I think is enough to cause issues with sharpening. I haven't sharpened this knife, to be completely honest. I haven't needed to, because the S90V is so good. But I haven't needed to sharpen it, but I don't foresee any issues with it. I think that it, you know, just going to help with those pull cuts a little bit. So, but other than that, just absolutely beautifully made. As always, you know, if you watch my videos on these Jackwolf knives, I've never well, aside from GEC, I haven't really been able to see as much of a variety of different types of knives from a company. And it's really amazing, the quality of these. They are really, really nicely done. So really cool knife from Jackwolf Knives. I think a great fit for the theme, the aesthetic here in this particular version, and I've really enjoyed getting to check it out. So as always, I want to say a huge thank you to Ben of Jackwolf Knives, Donnie at Jackwolf Knives, everyone there doing great things, and good luck getting one of these. Dropping today, so grab one when you can here. And if you do, make sure you get it at Traditional Pocket Knives or Knives Ship Free. I'll have links in the description. And make sure you subscribe to the channel, click the bell, and select all, so you know when I post new videos. I do have lots of videos on Jackwolf Knives, and should have more coming. And then make sure you subscribe to my newsletter on my website, knifethoughts.com, where I post articles on knives like this and knife-related topics. And last but not least, as always, don't forget to go out and do good.